Hi, my name is Afi Rule. I am an artist and a human talking about life in my daily life talks. Welcome to today's daily life talk, which happens to fall on the very last day of May, which May was Mental Health Awareness Month. And I wanted to talk to you about grief, and I wanted to share 3 things that I have learned in my own experience in life with grief, in hopes that it can help you embrace it and overcome it in your own life if you're experiencing grief, if you feel overwhelmed by it. So the first thing that I have learned about grief is that sometimes it doesn't leave. It simply becomes a part of your new emotional suite, meaning there's an ebb and flow to it. It comes and goes just like any other emotion, like joy, anger, sadness, frustration, even disgust or excitement. Grief becomes something, now that you have experienced it, it becomes something that comes and goes just like any other emotion. And I believe that when you embrace that, it takes the intimidation out of it. It takes the fear out of it. Sometimes it takes the sting out of it. And you know that grief is simply a part of being human, and that we all experience it. Any human being that has experienced a loss, especially one that is permanent, experiences grief. So the second thing that I have learned is that grief tends to be problematic more when we stop living our lives, meaning we stuff it and we don't want to acknowledge it, or we become so engulfed by it that we simply can't move on. We can't acknowledge all the other areas of our lives, some of which may have still been going really great, but we can't acknowledge the other parts of our life because we're so engulfed by the grief. I have learned that when you can live your life in a way where you give yourself the space to feel the grief, stop, let yourself feel the grief, and then resume and keep going, that is when you start to heal from the emotional overwhelm of the grief. So I wanted to share a scripture that I feel like perfectly embodies that, and that is Psalm 126, 5 and 6, which is, "Those who sow with tears will reap with songs of joy. Those who go out weeping, carrying seed to sow, will return with songs of joy, carrying sheaves with them." So now obviously there's a lot going on in that particular passage, but for this particular point, you're active in your life still. You are crying tears while you are sowing, while you are working, while you are carrying out your day-to-day responsibilities, while you are still showing up, while you are still doing your best to be present for the people who are left in your life, for the things that are left in your life. And it's hard. It's hard, especially when that loss is permanent and irreversible. But that leads me to the next point, which is that it's important to not buy into the misconception that you can't have a life or a good life after grief, that there's nothing on the other side of grief, that you can't have joy again after grief, or that you will always be overwhelmed by grief. I have come to view grief like a tidal wave. If you've ever watched surfers, you see them either get completely engulfed by it and then they eventually pop back up, right? Or they have timed that tidal wave to a T and they surf and they ride it. I liken grief to that because there are times where there were times where I would be completely engulfed by it and it would just completely wreck me. But then I noticed that I was able to finally figure out a way to come back up to the surface, and then I was okay. And then there were other times I would see the grief coming, so to speak, and I would learn how to ride it and surf it. And that's okay too. But the bottom line is that you can experience grief, but still go on to have joy in your life, still go on to embrace new things in your life, new people in your life. And they'll never replace the things or the people that you lost, but they may just add these really wonderful, beautiful things to your life. And you might miss out on them if you continue to just look at the engulfing and the overwhelming and sadness that comes with grief. I really believe that the more we are able to allow ourselves to process it and to come to terms with the loss and accept it and make the commitment and the decision to go on with our lives and sow in tears, to work in our tears while we are crying, that is where the beauty of new life begins. So I hope that helped you. And if you are experiencing grief, I would just like to encourage you and say that there is life after grief. And I also want to encourage you and say that sometimes it's good to talk to a grief counselor. Counseling is great. It's a really great resource that helps a lot of people. And there's no shame in seeing a counselor. So that concludes my take on grief, my experience on grief. And I hope that something that I said encourages you and that it helps you. And yeah, let me know what you think. Leave a comment below and we'll talk soon. Bye.